Hey everyone, just waiting for some people to walk through here. All right, I am Mike Canfer. I'm with Adobe's Hollywood Film Unit. And one of the reasons that unit even exists is from our very early relationship that started maybe 2007, 2008 with David Fincher and the fine young lads that work with him. Really are the ones that help put Adobe on the map for professional cutting in a typical Hollywood cutting room. So thank you, Tyler Nelson. Thank you, Billy Peek, for helping put Adobe on the map in Hollywood. And we're in for a real treat here because how many times do you have the opportunity to go behind the scenes in the cutting room of an amazing filmmaker like David Fincher? That's exactly what we're going to do today. So one very interesting thing is that Tyler and Billy have worked with one of our amazing partners, the PIC system, to develop a filmmaking automated database that does some really incredible things that move things along in the cutting room from the time you get dailies in all the way through visual effects turnovers. And this was something that really accelerated its development during MINDHUNTER, where Pix is now involved. This is going to be a Pix product that is not available immediately, but there'll be a waiting list. During the year, you can get more information about how you will eventually be able to get this in your hands. So for those of you who don't know what Pix is, it's pretty much ubiquitous in Hollywood. There's thousands of users every day, whether they're making TV shows or doing movies, where from the time footage is shot till it makes it to the cutting room, till all the reviews and approval are done for visual effects or production design or costume, wardrobe, all of that is through Pix, which is a secure way to have all the collaborators in filmmaking exchange assets, look at them, comment on them, review and approve them. And the one takeaway from today that I think you'll find really interesting is how these guys have worked really hard to integrate and automate it with Adobe Premiere. So without further ado, I'm going to let, who's going first?
Start.
You are Tyler?
Yep.
Take it away, Tyler, and thank you for coming all the way to NAB.
Thank you, Mike. So, as Mike introduced, I'm Tyler Nelson, and this is Billy Peek, and we're going to kind of like go over a typical day's dailies for our show Mindhunter. And to piggyback on what Mike was saying, Billy and I basically built what we're about to show you out of necessity. These day and age, offline editorial cutting rooms are responsible for a lot more than they've ever been required to do in the last many, many years. So assistant editors are now data wranglers, they're visual effects editors. They're no longer sitting in the cutting room with editors learning how to be editors. They are asset managers, essentially. So what we've done is we've built this tool that takes everything that's ever been acquired on set and at the beginning of post and puts it all in one location and starts utilizing the metadata that is fed into this system in very unique ways. So that's what we're going to show you today. I am going to be playing the role of an assistant editor, which I haven't been in many years, but I'm going to let Billy walk you through while I do a day's dailies for an assistant editor. Billy?
Yeah, so I'm going to demo the process we've come up with through Dispatch to do dailies, where a lot of things are automated and all of the grunt work is taken out. Anything that doesn't require human judgment is handled by the computer. Tyler is going to do a day of dailies the way that we had to do it back when I started and back when he started, doing everything by hand. So Tyler, why don't you bring your footage into Premiere there?
All right. So what I have here is a single day's worth of dailies from Mindhunter Season 1, Episode 105 and 106. We shoot in blocks, but this is day 23. And for day 23, it looks like they shot 8 camera cards, 4 A cameras and 4 B cameras, and so far nothing has been organized for me. This has all been sunk with our dailies operating box, Next Labs system created by Photochem. And but unfortunately, all that information is just the same red camera name that comes into the system. So I'm going to go through and start naming this the way I did before we actually had dispatch here.
So in the meantime, like Tyler said, we process all of our dailies through Photochem's NextLab. The NextLab has all of this information. If we could switch over to my screen. It has already pulled in all of the audio. It's pulled in all the video. It knows the name of the take and scene from the audio metadata. It knows the sync relationships. It knows what the slate name was based on the audio metadata. So we have all this great metadata that Tyler's having to enter back in by hand because nothing can tie it together. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to import into my database this CSV from NextLab, which is a CSV, basically a spreadsheet of all of our footage and metadata. That's going to come in, and it's doing things. It's importing it into our codebook. Back in the day, when we were shooting on film, you had to have a way to know where each of your takes were on the negative. And the way you did that was you had a codebook, which kept track of, okay, this take happened at this key code on the film, which was a strip of numbers that ran along the bottom of the film. So you could always get back to what each take was as you were cutting. In modern digital workflows, a lot of digital cutting rooms have a code book that tells them what take is what original camera file. So you can see that I've brought a lot of my metadata in. Already, it knows what the camera file name is and what the slate name is based on what NextLab's extracted from the audio metadata. I have information about what episode, and because of that, Dispatch has been able to break out, okay, what scene it is, what take it is, what camera it is. None of that metadata has been entered separately by hand before. Dispatch just understands slates and can break it apart and organize it that way. I can see information about my footage, like what Kelvin temperature was shot at, what ISO temperature, or what ISO it was shot at, stuff like that. And now now that I know how many clips I have, for this day I had 224 clips, I'm going to relink to our edit media on my drive here. And I'm also going to relink to my raw media. And you can see that this is just happening in the background, so I don't have to wait for it to relink. It just kind of updates the database as it's going. Oh, I chose the wrong folder there. My raw media, cool. And then once those two things are relinked, and you can see that it's pushed me little notifications that those have been relinked, I'm going to import the file metadata. So I have information already from NextLab, but part of what our philosophy with this database is that we want to hoard information from everywhere. If there's stuff in the script notes, we want to know that. If there's stuff from NextLab, we want to know that. If there's stuff from the raw files, we want to know that. And instead of like most programs where you have one ISO field or one description field or whatever, this actually remembers what the values are from different sources and then ranks them. So like for ISO, I can see what the camera said it was, or what the script supervisor thought it was set to, or in the case of like NextLab, what NextLab says it was. So that just finished importing. So now you can see if I go to ISO, if I go to one where I have raw, so I'm going to find a shot where I have online raw media. And you can see if I go to ISO now, I can see that, okay, the NextLab says it was 640 and the camera raw says it's 640. But it's important to capture both of those because the NextLab operator may have changed the ISO before transcoding if he wanted it brighter or darker. And likewise, if David decides that, oh no, when we print this media for Conformer for VFX, it needs to be half a step brighter, I can increase this to 800. Now I've non-destructively said that this shot for the rest of the show should be printed at 800 ISO, but I can see what the original values were still and get rid of them if I want to, without losing any data or having to go back to like another spreadsheet of what it was originally set to. So I'm also going to, while we're doing this, I'm going to generate thumbnails, which is something that a lot of assistant editors do for their dailies logs, and they generally have to do it by hand. The other thing that happens with thumbnails a lot of the time is, it's the first frame, middle frame, and last frame. So the first frame isn't super usable, and the last frame isn't super usable because it's like a slate and an empty frame. The great thing about this being designed by working assistant editors is that we know of like little hiccups like that. So Dispatch goes through and it makes a thumbnail 15% of the way in and 15% from the end, so that you're more likely to have usable thumbnails. And you can see they popped in there while I was talking. So now I have all my thumbnails. First frame, middle frame, last frame. I'm starting to build a really good set of metadata. Tyler, how are you doing?
I just started on my second camera card.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you your script notes, and if you don't mind starting to
yeah,
apply what
thanks.
the script supervisor
Appreciate
had
it.
to say on set. And if you could mark like all the start takes and like any notes she had, can you mark up markers for that?
Okay.
And while Tyler's doing that, so why don't we go to his screen for a second?
All right. I am just going to start with this clip. Okay. This was a 20-minute. Okay.
Okay, this is taking too long. Why don't we go back to mine? So he's going to go find all the clips and mark up all the notes that the script supervisor had. Meanwhile, I'm going to just import some script notes. Our script supervisor uses a database on set as well that interfaces with ours. We can also take script information from scriptd. If we don't mind switching back to my screen for a sec. Cool. So I'm going to import a CSV from our script supervisor. It's important to say that all of this is happening automatically. This information has never been entered more than once. So this CSV came straight out of the program she uses to write all of her script notes down. So that's going to import. And we're going to get things like what takes the director really liked, what takes he really didn't like, descriptions for all of the takes. You can see it all popped up right here. So I have a list of all of her notes from today. I can see that, oh, these two were marked delete, which means David doesn't want the editors to see it and he doesn't want it in the playlists. I have descriptions for every shot. I have the lens and T-stop that every shot was named on, which he's going to have to enter by hand into Premiere fields. And I can see if I have a link to my codebook files over here. If the slate is green, it means it's found a link by the slate name. If the camera is green, it means it's found a link by the camera name. So you can see right here, these are actually grayed out. And that's because on set, the audio metadata accidentally put a Y in front of the scene number when it shouldn't have been there. So we're not going to even worry about that. This is just going to fix it. The scripty knows what scene it is, so we're going to use her naming convention. And then down at the bottom here, I have one thing too that didn't have a link, and it looks like she accidentally called it Gcam instead of Bcam. So I'm just going to fix that real quick. I get my link. And now I'm going to apply these script notes. So this is going to go through and now apply all of these notes to my proper code book. So I'm going to get descriptions for free. I'm going to get star and delete status for free. These are things that would normally have to be entered by hand by the assistant. If you're lucky in one place, like if you have a database where you can enter it by hand, but most likely in two places, once in Premiere and once on Pix for dailies. We use Pix for a lot of things like posting cuts. We also use it for dailies. A lot of people need to go through, whether it's Frame.io or Pix or whatever they're using to post dailies, and do all of this by hand. But we have a better way. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my codebook. And you can see now I have descriptions in all of my files. I have the script notes already lined up. I can go into this cool little list view, and I can look at my shots this way. So I can see all the setups and multicam. So these were shot as part of the same setup, A cam and B cam. They were shot at the same time. It's really easy to tell that. I can go ahead and collapse and just get an overview of okay, what angles were shot today for each setup. And now that I have all of this, I actually have all the information I need to create a dailies project. So I'm going to go back to this view. Oh, sorry, the form view. And then I'm going to do two things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to update my Pix dailies. So I'm going to go to Pix, update Pix metadata. And what that's going to do is there's a bunch of clips on Pix that I need to turn into a playlist for the production and the studio that we're going to send to them over the internet. And this is going to go and on all those clips, add the description we just brought in, add star and delete status takes, rename them from the original camera raw to the shot raw. And I'm just going to let that happen in the background. So I'm going to search for those clips, and I'm going to also update them. So this is going to link everything up. Just put in my Pix username and password. Hit enter. It's going to start a session. And then once that's logged in and made sure that it can go, now it's just going to update all that stuff in the background, and we'll come back to it. And this is one of the nice things, too, is that the computer can take care of that for me, building my stuff in the cloud to send to the studio, while I make Tyler's edit project. So now that I have all this information, I'm going to create XML that I'm just going to put on my desktop. And then I'm going to take that XML, I'm going to bring it into Premiere. And you can see I have a really nice project organized by episode and setup. If I drag this out a little bit, you can see that each setup has a string out of clips. So all of my footage has been strung out for each setup, last take to first take. We have script notes already applied to the take. So like this one, the script note is that it was good, 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 no good for sound. All of that's been applied automatically. All of my clips are totally organized. The sequences have the descriptions that the scriptie had on them. The multicams have also already been made if you use multicams, so I can switch angles already. Normally you'd have to do all of this by hand, all of this organization. If I go to a scene where they had a star take, we use red for our star takes, so the star takes have already been marked and brought to the front. And all this was done, and I just brought it in, poof.
Tyler, where are you in making your dailies project?
I am currently renaming the B camera stuff. I've added script notes to one setup,
Okay,
and
so
I haven't even begun multicamming.
all right, so Tyler's a little bit behind. Let's see what else we can do in the time that we have while Tyler's building his dailies project. So at this point, we're done. I've built a dailies project from scratch the way that I would do it on the actual day. And at this point, I can move on to other things. I can help with sound. I can help with like pulling selects takes. I can help with if the director or the editor wants a little help with like an assembly or like wants to throw something that way. I can be more involved in the creative process because all of this work that doesn't really require human judgment, like sorting clips and naming clips and lining them up to other pieces of paper, has already been done for me. So let's go up to picks because I still have to make my picks playlists. It looks like it's found all of my clips, so I'm going to open those up, open up the folder that they're in. Oh wait, here, let me choose a better. So here, let me choose a scene with more clips in it. Scene 4 has a lot more. So you can see that all my clips are linked, so I can see what picks items it found in this panel over here. And then I can open it directly in Pix. So these are all of my dailies in the cloud that I need to send to the studio. I can go and double check and make sure, okay, all of these have been named correctly, all of the descriptions have been added correctly, all of the statuses have been set correctly. So these are ready to go. These are ready to turn into a playlist. I just need to send them to the studio. So I'm going to go here again. I'm going to say dailies, create playlists. And I'm going to just make my default playlist. So now if I go, let's see, is that going? Okay, good. That's chugging. Great. So this is creating a playlist. So I'm going to go here. And let's see, my playlist is right. This is the one I just made. So I'm going to open that up. That's going to load. And while that's loading, connecting to the internet, why don't we check in on how Tyler's doing? Oh, here we go, it loaded. So you can see everything has been automatically sorted. We do last take first. Sorting slates is also really difficult. You can't sort them just by their name because if you have a scene Y2, then that needs to come before scene 4, which normal sorts can't handle. So Dispatch is slate aware, so it can break apart the entire part of the slate, sort it correctly by setup and episode, by episode setup, take, if there's a series, it can also sort that. It's aware of all that stuff. And then the last thing I need to do is I need to make dailies logs. So I'm just going to go to reports, create a dailies log. The studio and the production team like to get like a nice PDF sheet of all the dailies each day with the playlists. So I'm just going to make a dailies log right here. You can see it creates like a nice clean dailies log with all the information. All of the thumbnails are automatically generated. We have all the camera info here, all the info from the script supervisor here about the slate and the description. It's automatically sorted. If I go down to a star take, which I think was, let's see, probably closer to around here. And I know a lot of assistants who end up having to do these sorts of dailies logs by hand. So having them automatically generated for you is a pretty big godsend. So here we go. So star takes are automatically marked. You can see which takes are stars. This is good to go to the studio, good to go to production. All I have to do is upload these to Pix, send it out with a playlist, and I'm done with my entire dailies workflow for the day, for the shoot day. So let's see what else. Let's see. We got a little bit more time left. Let's do a VFX turnover.
Why don't we check in with Tyler real quick to see how he's doing, if you want to switch the screen.
I just finished my multicams for one setup and finally was able to put it into a sequence. So I'm a little bit far behind you here, Billy, but I'm catching up.
How many more setups do you have?
I don't know.
Oh.
A lot.
Okay. Well, keep chugging. We'll check back soon.
So let's do a VFX turnover. That's something you have to do a lot of when you're working on a show. I have 3.
Oh, let's switch back to my screen. Sorry.
Thanks. So I have 3 splits here. If you don't know what a split is, there's a lot of times the editors like to retime the actors on each side of the screen so that the timing between them is a little bit different. So they may, there may be a line and then a second line that's in response, and the editor wants to bring that second line up a little bit to compress the time scale. So we'll split each actor on each side. You can see that we've done that here if I disable this to retime them. We do a lot of these on Mindhunter. I think we had 500 of them in season 1. So I have to turn over a lot of these kinds of shots. In total on Mindhunter, we had 5,000 either visual effect shots or opticals, like stabilizations and stuff like that. And I and the other assistants were, the only VFX editors. There wasn't a dedicated VFX editor. So the bulk of it fell to me to organize. So I relied a lot on automation to keep track of the 5,000 shots we had. So I'm going to output. Normally, when you do VFX turnover, you have to do a pull list, which means you have to bring everything down to one layer. You have to make sure that you don't have any dupe frames or anything like that. You have to do all the sort of prep work. You can see here we actually have a respeed. So the editor has gone from 100% to 200% in this little section, the speed this middle guy up right here, back to 100%. You'd have to get rid of all that sort of stuff to do a pull list. And then you'd have like a separate EDL that shows them how to reassemble that, plus your pull list. And this, you can just output as long as there's black space between the different shots, you can just output an XML. Going to drop that on the desktop. And then I'm going to go over to my VFX section of Dispatch. And I'm going to drop that XML and import it. And this is going to do a few things. This is actually automatically going to name my VFX based on the scene. So I don't have to do any sort of looking up in a spreadsheet of like what the VFX name should be. It's going to automatically concatenate those respeeds. So you'll see here that this item here has a respeed map in it. It's automatically brought in white markers because that's what I had it set to do as notes that will get put on the count sheets. So I had a little note here to take out dust on this frame. So you can see that it's made a little note here. I'm going to just assign this to myself. I'm going to say I'm the artist on this. I'm going to say that this is a split. And just replace that for all of them because they're all splits. And then I would go through normally and just give a little description for each of these elements. So like this is the left side of screen, so this would be left Benji. And this is the right side of screen, so this would be right Holden. Normally I go through and do that for all of them, but I'm not going to worry about doing that here. So the next thing I need to do is I'm going to start a render farm. So we pull all of our own frames ourselves. We don't go out of house. We don't go to a lab. We keep all of our raw media stored on either LTO or live on our server. And our database actually also helps manage that. It is aware of what is in the cut and in the selects, and will, as the raw storage fills up, get rid of stuff that is not in the selects, and then if we run out of stuff not in the selects, well, first of all, it'll get rid of deleted takes. Then it will get rid of stuff not in the selects, and then it will move stuff off of storage that's not in the cut. So that I have to restore the least amount possible from LTO, because restoring from LTO is a little time consuming. It's better if it's just on my storage live. So we're going to do some frame pulls. I'm going to start a render farm. So this comes with a little companion tool. It's a little render farm that runs in terminal. It can be loaded on any computer on your network. It doesn't have to be running the proper dispatch. So you can turn your network instantly into a render farm. There's no crazy special setup. You just start the terminal, it connects to dispatch, and we'll start rendering frames from the jobs you queue. So I'm going to queue these jobs. I'm just going to do JPEGs because they're pretty fast, and this laptop would hate me if I did EXRs, which is our normal one. And then I'm just going to make a little export folder here on the desktop. So this is going to export. You're going to see in a second that this render farm is going to pick up this job. Any second now. There it goes. And now I have a nice, neat, organized package that's starting to get created. So you can see it's breaking it out by VFX shot and element. It's going to start dropping JPEG frames in here. So you can see the JPEG frames are starting to get dropped. While that's going, I'm going to create my count sheets. So I'm going to export count sheets. And this is going to create a nice little PDF with a count sheet for every shot. And you can see that respeeds are automatically mapped for the artists. So here, we have this respeed, this 200%. So they have a nice graphic representation the artist does of how they need to rebuild that element. And it has my little takeout dust on this frame. You can see it dropped a little A on each of these elements because they're from the same plate. That, hey, on that frame, we need to dust bust that shot. And at the bottom here, because I've output JPEGs, it's giving them a little bit of info about, okay, what format, what color space, and what gamma space I transcoded at. And then I think we have enough time to do VFX cut-ins right quick. So now that I've turned over VFX, Tyler, I assume, are we done with dailies yet?
No, not even close, Billy.
All right. So now let's cut in some VFX while we're waiting for Tyler. I'm going to go to my main project, my 106 cut. So this is our 106 sequence. It's episode 106. It's everything in the show. Fun fact, the blue ones are VFX, so that's how many VFX we had in the show for this particular episode. I'm going to bring in some stabilizations. So I'm going to find a stabilization that I marked to be cut in. So I have 46 shots here that I'm going to cut in. I only have a minute, so I think I can do it. I've previously analyzed my 106 sequence, so I've fed my XML, not a conform, not anything, just my editor sequence, into Dispatch, and it's gone through and looked for any plates that it recognizes, any previous VFX returns that it recognizes, and says, okay, I think this shot goes here, I think this shot goes here, I recognize that plate, that's the primary plate for this VFX shot, so that one probably goes here. And I'm going to take this XML that I just made. Where are we? There we Oh, shoot. Oh, don't open that. Here we go. This delivery XML. I'm going to drag it in. And you'll see here that I have this. I have two things. I have my shots, which most of these are actually already in the project because obviously this is a cut that's already existed. But it would be organized by deliveries. Everything would be organized by deliveries. And I have I have two sequences here, one for another episode, and then one for this current cut of 106, which is this one. You can see I have a black slug here to space everything out. And then all of these shots are already spaced out where they go in the episode. So all I need to do, and this is, again, all automatic. I have never entered in. I've never gone to each VFX record and said, OK, this one goes at this time, this one goes at this time. All I've done is I've loaded an XML of my sequence and told Dispatch, just figure it out. So I'm going to bring in this sequence. And now if you look, I can step through it, and all of my VFX, oops, sorry, I deleted it. All my VFX are automatically cut in. So you can see, okay, this shot is lined up where it needs to go, great. Okay, this one is lined up where it needs to go. And if the cut has changed at all, because you're loading the sequence for it to analyze, like if a shot got extended, it'll extend the shot for you. If your shot got pulled back, it'll pull back the shot for you. If the shot is moved, it'll find the plate again and put it in the right place. So I've just cut in 46 shots. That's something that would normally take probably about an hour between loading them all in and trimming out the head and tail and then finding it again in the sequence and dropping it in and adjusting the in and out points. So yeah, I think we're kind of coming to a close. So in the 25 minutes I've been up here showing all the tools that we've made to kind of re-empower assistant editors to not have to worry about this kind of stuff and start being creative again. In these 25 minutes, I have put together a dailies project from start to finish. I have turned over 3 VFX shots, and I've cut in 46 shots to an episode. And Tyler, why don't we go back to your screen real quick, and let's see how far you've made it. Oh, and I've made Pix playlists and sent out dailies logs for those. So let's see how far you got in just the dailies project.
Well, I still have a whole bunch of B cameras to do, but I am almost done with A cam renaming. So a little bit behind you, Billy. Yeah.
All right. So, anyway. And I should point out that when Tyler was an assistant, he was legendary for being the fastest assistant in the West. So if Tyler can't do it as fast, no one can.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've just coded my way out of having to be that fast myself.
Yeah. Anyway,
All right.
we're going to be over in the corner here if anybody wants to come ask us any more questions. But thank you for watching the presentation.
Yeah. And again, I want to stress to me the thing that's really important about this is that it helps the assistants be creative again, and it gives you back a work-life balance. Like, I'm not staying anymore until 3 a.m., 4 a.m. cutting in shots. I can do it all very quickly, have my creative fulfillment, and also have a balanced life. And I think that's all really important and something that will hopefully resonate with a lot of assistant editors in the crowd. So cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.